Hello everyone and welcome to Live Interactive English. I am Mike.
I'm Rainbow.
And today we are beginning an article about a really bad thing. Like a really bad, I can't use enough reallys. This is really bad thing that happened, here's the good news, a really long time ago.
Oh, so you're not talking about COVID, because that was pretty bad.
Yeah, COVID is baby stuff compared to this. COVID is amateur children playing baseball, and this is the MLB of diseases. We're talking about the Black Death. COVID, what did it like, if you get it, 1% of people died or something, right?
Yeah.
With the Black Death, around 30% of the people in Europe died.
Whoa, I heard like the symptoms were also really bad.
Horrible.
What were they?
Oh, you'd get a fever, you would get large things growing under your armpits. They would produce a smelly, terrible thing if I touched you or breathed.
Like rotten.
It just killed people like it was nobody's business. It was absolutely horrible. They had several waves of it in Europe over a couple of hundred years. The worst was in the 1300s, but even in the 1600s, it killed thousands of people in Britain and other places. The good news is it's basically gone.
What do you mean by basically?
Well, it's still out there a little bit. I had a friend who went to India about 20 years ago, and at that time, there was an outbreak of this same disease. But of course, today, we have things like hospitals.
We have vaccines?
Doctors, science.
Yeah.
Back then, they didn't have any of that.
Oh, goodness.
You might, put some dried flowers next to your bed and hope that the nice smell will keep you healthy.
Oh.
This is the kind of science that they had, so that's why a lot of people died. But don't worry, it probably won't come back. I don't think it can come back.
Sounds
I think
awful.
That's impossible. But let's check it out, because it's part of history, and it's something that once you read it and learn about it, you won't forget it, and you will be happy you live now. We're talking 1 in 3, the horror of the Black Death. First, there were rumors whispered in European cities about an unknown disease in Asia. Then, in 1347, ships landed in Italy with most of the sailors on board dead or dying. From then on, Europe was never the same again. These sailors were sick with the Black Death, a disease that would go on to kill roughly 1 in 3 of all Europeans between 1347 and 1351. Today, scientists know the disease was spread by rats. These animals carried infected fleas that would then go on to bite people. Those who already had the disease could also spread it to others by sneezing and coughing. However, this was not understood at the time, so people were powerless to stop the illness.
Okay, so before we get started, we have to talk about this one word that appears in the title. The title is the horror of the Black Death. So horror, this is a noun. It is something completely awful and scary and frightening, and it would not leave your mind because it's just so intense and it's so bad. It's not in a good way, it's in a bad way, and it's an awful way. For example, if you watch a horror movie, this is a movie where things will come out to scare you or haunt you, and you have bad dreams about it at night. And if you witness horror in real life, it is something that will never leave your mind. I have a sentence for you. It says, she will remember the horror of what she saw until the day she dies. Horror can be experienced when someone dies, if something's very disgusting, if there's a disease, if there's something that your mind cannot even imagine, it's awful. Okay, let's read about this in the first sentence of the article, which says, first, there were rumors whispered in European cities about an unknown disease in Asia. We don't know about it, but there's a rumor.
And that's often how things start, right? Before you even see things on the news, especially in the old days, before they had newspapers and stuff, you would hear rumors. What was that? Oh my God. So I'm hearing a rumor. A rumor is kind of a bit of news, but it's not an official bit of news, okay? So it's not quite a fact.
It's like gossip or
it's
something.
Like gossip.
Yeah.
It's like I heard this thing, but I didn't hear it from the person who was there or the person who did it.
It wasn't on the
news. Responsible. I didn't hear an official saying, yes, this is true. This is what happened. I'm telling you the facts. For example, I heard rumors that they are making a new Batman movie.
Is that true?
I have no idea, but I don't work in Hollywood. I don't know any movie stars or movie directors. So I heard a story. I saw it on a website, but only when they say, we are making, that's when I'll know. All right, so people first heard stories coming from far away that people were dying of a disease, these rumors, right? Then in 1347, ships landed in Italy with most of the sailors on board dead or dying.
Oh, imagine that.
That's horror already there.
Horror.
A boat pulls into Venice or Genoa or somewhere, and they're like, hey, Captain. Oh, Captain's dead. Oh, hey, he's dead too.
Oh,
and there's like one guy pulling on a sail and one guy driving the boat because everyone else on the boat is dead or dying, not from a battle, a pirate attack, a big storm, from a disease. So this is how it first started back there in Europe when the rumors became true, when the rumors became fact. From then on, from 1347, Europe was never the same again. This disease changed the face of the entire continent of Europe.
These sailors were sick with the Black Death, a disease that would go on to kill roughly 1 in 3 of all Europeans between 1347 and 1351.
33% of people died.
That's a lot of people.
Right.
Today, scientists know the disease was spread by rats. So there were these rats on the boats and they had these diseases and all the people got it and they all died. And it was confirmed later by a scientist.
That's true. That's actually, well, not entirely true. We blame rats, but it was really the fleas on the rats that would then jump from the rats to the people, bite the people, and that's how they would get it. But of course, the rats were carrying the fleas. And, rats on boats, very common. But yeah, back then they didn't have a lot of science or the people who do science, scientists. Okay, a scientist is someone who studies science in a very methodical, careful way. They're not just guessing things. They're not pulling ideas out of their head and saying, hey, this is a thing. No, they do experiments. They collect facts. They record
Testing
data.
Theories.
They test theories again and again and again until they finally prove them to be true 100%. Sir Isaac Newton is one of the most famous scientists in history, did all sorts of things in physics, with light, with weight, with all sorts of stuff, gravity, of course. And the good thing is he was born in the 1600s, so he didn't get killed by the Black Death.
That is very good.
Good thing. Yes. These animals carried infected fleas that would then go on to bite people. Yeah, so let's blame the fleas, not the rats. Rats are not great, but they didn't actually give the disease. It was the fleas. Those who already had the disease could also spread it to others by sneezing and coughing.
Through
and
the
no,
air.
they didn't have PM2 masks. They didn't have lovely masks, from the 7-Eleven. N95, all that kind. Yeah, that's the one. They didn't have any of that kind of stuff. They didn't understand how this was spreading. People would often just go to church and pray to God. But of course, then they're spreading the disease in the crowded church. So this was a really terrible situation with a terrible disease.
However, this was not understood at the time, so people were powerless to stop the illness. No one knew how the disease was spread. So again, like Mike said, they would pray, but they would go to these places and spread it even more. All right, so we're going to take a quick break here and we'll come back to learn more about the spread of the Black Death.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。这2天的课程是要介绍曾经肆虐欧洲可怕的黑死病。标题写到 One in three, the horror of the Black Death。那这边说的 One in three 指的就是1/3。Horror 这个名词则是指事况的这个恐怖啊、残酷或是表达惊恐的意思。Rainbow 老师在解释时，他也有提到 haunt 这个动词。H-A-U-N-T Haunt 可以表达鬼魂的出没，出没在哪里这样子，或者是表达纠缠的意思。好，那我们就来看看黑死病是如何开始的。首先，在欧洲城市流传着关于亚洲有一种未知疾病的谣言。接着，在1347年，船只抵达意大利，船上大多数的水手已经死亡或者是奄奄一息。从那时起啊，欧洲就不再一样了。那些水手染上了黑死病，那这种疾病在接下来的1347年到1351年之间，导致大约1/3欧洲人死亡。那么现今科学家知道这种疾病是由老鼠传播的，这些动物身上都有那种带有这种受到感染的跳蚤，跳蚤接着会去叮咬人类，而感染者也可能就会透过打喷嚏啊或是咳嗽，把病传染给其他人。那遗憾的是，当时人们不了解，也无力阻止这种疾病。好，单字Rumor 它表示谣言或是传闻，那么 scientist 表示科学家。Mike 老师在讲解时，他有提到 methodical M-E-T-H-O-D-I-C-A-L methodical 它是形容有条理的或是井然有序的。好，这边2个重点，我们进入文法时间。我们来看第一个重点是 there be 动词加名词，后面再加分词 VING 或 PP 的句型。那首先呢 there 加 be 动词加名词可以表达有什么什么，有什么东西的存在。真正的主词是这个名词，所以我们 be 动词的单复数是要依照这个名词来决定。那接着呢，在名词的后面接了分词 VING 或是 PP 来做修饰，它其实是由形容词子句简化而来。那当它是主动的时候，是用现在分词 VING， 被动的时候用过去分词 PP。举例来说 ，There's a message written on the last page of the book。有一则讯息写在书本的最后一页，那讯息是被写的，所以用 written。好，第2个重点是 go on 的不同用法。第一个我们可以用 go on to 加上动词去表达说接着去做某事，那是跟之前不同的事情哦。像 The secretary greeted us and went on to show us around the office。秘书招呼我们，接着带我们四处参观办公室。那第2个用法是 go on 加上动词 ing， 这是指继续做之前正在做的事，那会跟 go on with something 意思相同。例如 He took a sip of his coffee and went on reading the newspaper。他喝了一口咖啡，接着继续读报纸。那解华课文中。
Conditions across Europe in 1347 were ideal for the spread of the disease. Trade between countries was common, and ships bearing goods for trade, like wool and timber, also carried infected rats from port to port. Cities and towns were crowded and dirty, which meant the disease could quickly spread between people. Rats and fleas were everywhere, and the Black Death soon reached every corner of the continent.
All right, we are back and we're talking about the Black Death, a terrible disease that spread across Europe in the 1300s and killed 1 in 3 or 33%. Now, of course, for a disease to have that kind of effect, it has to be really dangerous, really deadly. But it also has to have a way of spreading,
yeah,
right?
I mean, really fast,
just
too.
Started on an island and no one visited there, well, the people on the island might suffer or die, but it won't go around the world. But with the Black Death, it was like, I guess we would use that term, a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Or all these terrible things all came together at the same time to make a really, really terrible thing. And that's what they were dealing with no science, remember. No masks, no medicines, no doctors, no hospitals, none of that.
Conditions across Europe in 1347 were ideal for the spread of the disease. What that means is like everything was perfect for the disease to spread, which is bad, but the conditions were good for it to spread. So when we say ideal, it means perfect for something. When we imagine a situation, something that's ideal is exactly how we want it. Tomorrow's weather will be ideal for the beach. So that's going to be, I'm going to say, not too hot and not too cold with just a little bit of a breeze. It will be perfect for going to the beach.
Yeah, and we often use perfect and ideal in pretty much exactly the same way.
Yeah.
So what were these perfect or ideal conditions? It says trade between countries was common, and ships bearing goods for trade, like wool and timber, also carried infected rats from port to port. So it wasn't the modern world that we know now, but it was a much more modern world than they'd had, a few hundred years earlier. You had the Silk Road and the spice route bringing things from China and Asia, either by land or by boat. And then once things were in Europe, you had Italy trading with France, France sending boats over to Britain, to England. So there was a lot of people traveling and things traveling around.
Yeah.
They had a lot of a sort of a modern economy. And one of the things that was traded was timber. When we say timber, we mean trees. Trees that have been cut down and cut up into boards and logs ready to use to build things. That is timber. So you don't go to a forest and say, oh, look at all the timber, unless you're there to cut it down.
Right.
But if you are going to build something on your home or something like that, or if you're going to make furniture, you might go out and buy some wood or timber. Wood that has been cut from trees to be used for construction. For example, he built his own house using only timber. So it was like a log cabin or a wooden cabin or something.
So let's go back to our article. Cities and towns were crowded and dirty, which meant the disease could quickly spread between people. Rats and fleas were everywhere, and the Black Death soon reached every corner of the continent. Wow, that was very fast because of the conditions, which were ideal for spreading the disease, unfortunately.
There you go. Now, they didn't have cities maybe as big as today, but London, Paris, Rome, these still would have had tens, hundreds of thousands of people. And the other thing, of course, that happened, which is very human, when people heard the disease was in their city, they would leave the city and go stay with their cousin in the country.
Spread it over there.
And spread the disease out of the city to smaller towns. Wonderful! Anyways, this is something that happened in history. Don't worry, it's highly unlikely to happen today. But it will be happening tomorrow because we're going to be talking about it.
Just in the article.
Just in the article. You don't even need to bring a mask. Just bring your brain. All right, we'll see you guys. Take care. And don't catch the Black Death between now and tomorrow. Just don't do it, okay?
在1347年，欧洲各地的环境非常适合黑死病的传播，就像 Mike 老师说的 ，perfect storm 完美风暴，许多糟糕的事情都同时发生，处在一个糟到不能再糟的那种局面了。那我们来看看为什么说非常适合黑死病的传播呢？首先，各国之间的贸易很常见，载着贸易货物像羊毛和木材等等的船只呢，也将受到感染的老鼠从一个港口运送到另一个港口去。那么城镇里面拥挤又脏乱，这意味着疾病可以在人与人之间迅速的传播。而且老鼠和跳蚤到处都是，这个黑死病很快就传到这片大陆的每个角落了。我们来看单字 ideal， 它是形容词，形容非常合适的或是理想的。Timber 在这边是指木材或是原木。那补充一下，文中用到 ships bearing goods for trade 是指说载着贸易货物的船只。这个 bearing 它是由 which bore 简化而来。那么 bear 当动词在这边就是表达承载、运送，它的三态是 bear, bore, borne。好，那我们再看到刚刚说这个 goods， 它是指商品货物，当这个意思解释时要用复数形。好，那以上是今天的讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
First, there were rumors whispered in European cities about an unknown disease in Asia. Then, in 1347, ships landed in Italy with most of the sailors on board dead or dying. From then on, Europe was never the same again. These sailors were sick with the Black Death, a disease that would go on to kill roughly 1 in 3 of all Europeans between 1347 and 1351. Today, scientists know the disease was spread by rats. These animals carried infected fleas that would then go on to bite people. Those who already had the disease could also spread it to others by sneezing and coughing. However, this was not understood at the time, so people were powerless to stop the illness. Conditions across Europe in 1347 were ideal for the spread of the disease. Trade between countries was common, and ships bearing goods for trade, like wool and timber, also carried infected rats from port to port. Cities and towns were crowded and dirty, which meant the disease could quickly spread between people. Rats and fleas were everywhere, and the Black Death soon reached every corner of the continent.
Hey, it's Kiwi on the street. I'm Kiki.
And I'm Winnie.
We know there are a lot of English phrases that we can use in our daily lives.
Now let's go ask some friends.
好，我们今天第一个题目是重要人物或者是大佬。Which one is it? 重要人物大佬。
我猜是 Top Gun。Top Gun。
我觉得是 Top Gun。
Top Gun? Are you sure?
Sure.
Top Dog。
Top Dog.
Top Dog? Are you sure it's not Top Gun?
I think it's dog.
You think it's dog? Okay, let's see if you are the top dog. Yes, you are the top dog for our game today. Okay. 席上眉梢，非常开心。
Over the Moon。
Over the moon. Oh, he was very confident.
Over the moon.
Oh, both very confident. Okay, over the moon.
Over the sky.
席上眉梢。
Over the Sky。
Over the moon.
Over the Moon。
Let me think about it.
Okay, think about it.
I think it's the sky.
You think it's the sky? Are you correct? Let's take a look. Sorry. It is over the moon, okay? So you go over the moon. 那我们今天学到了什么呢? Let's learn more about the phrases we heard today. Our first one is top dog. A lot of people will think of the meanest looking dog in a group of dogs. Well, one origin of the phrase comes from two people, and they are using a two-handled saw when they are sawing from timber. The more experienced person would stand on top of the timber, and the other person at the bottom of the saw pit. And where the timber lays, the iron stand, they were called dogs. So the positions of top dog and underdog actually came from the saw pit. And it basically means a person or a group that are in a position of power, especially after a period of competition or struggle to come out as the winner or the leader. Our next phrase is over the moon. This means to be extremely pleased or to be happy. You're so happy that you could literally go over the moon. Of course, we know that's impossible, right? But an example would be Judy was over the moon when Tim proposed to her. She was so happy that she could go over the moon. And these are our two phrases of the day. Kiwi later!